All right, once again, welcome everybody to MELS 601, Dr. Todd's cohort, clinical coach session for this evening. It is September the 26th, 2019. I am recording this session. So tonight, in looking at the agenda, what I put on the agenda was review Blackboard Shell, review task stream, talk a little bit more about the competency folio, and then see if you had any questions or I could help you with the APSL task 3. But before we get started, does anybody have any questions that that I can help you with, or whatever you need? Just let me know. Okay, any questions out there about task 3 or task 1 through 2? Anything about that? All right, well, if no one has any questions, then I'll go ahead and get started. I just wanted to make sure, we'll go ahead and talk about task 3 right now. Is everybody getting along just fine with task 3? You got a good grasp on your annotated bibliography, about giving your evidence-based practices that correlate or that address your identified learning gap? Is everybody in good shape with that, and good shape with getting all of your task 1 and 2 completed as well? Okay, all right. So I'm not going to mention task 3. I do want to go back and draw your attention to the scale handbook regarding task 3 or the APSL. If you haven't, took the time to read through the scale handbook, I'm not going to blame you one bit. It's a large document. However, there is some really good information in here, and if you haven't skimmed over it or took a look at some of the parts of the handbook, I would suggest you do that. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things right here, and this is like here's the beginning of the handbook. 601 talks about the APSL, gives an overview of the task, but I want to draw your attention here, and we'll come back to this later on, and I'm sure Dr. Todd will come back to it as well. But here are the 601 competencies that you're going to be dealing with in the APSL. And if you'll look up here, the APSL requires evidence of competency in the following 8 areas. So these are 8. If you'll remember, and we'll look at it when we get into task stream, there are 21 competencies overall. And those 21 competencies come from the North Carolina School Executive Evaluation for school administrators. Of that 21, you are going to address first these following 8 areas. In doing the APSL, you should have the opportunity to show evidence of leadership and communication, change management, delegation, dialogue and inquiry, judgment, systems thinking, technology, and visionary. So you're going to be able to show competencies in those 8 areas. But if you'll notice here, with an additional 4 competencies to be selected by the candidate. So you're going to actually address 12 competencies for this semester. And Dr. Todd will go over that if she hasn't already. I kind of kept up with her class sessions and her notes and things like that. So, but we'll come back to that and address that specifically later on. But just don't forget that you have a place to address this, or have a place in your handbook that you can look at this. Also, in each of the evidences, and by evidences I mean the APSL in this case, next semester it'll be the APTL, semester after that it'll be OMA. But for each of the evidences, there are student learning outcomes. So if you ever see the acronym SLO, as indicated right here, then this is where that's coming from, and you'll find that at the beginning of each evidence. So these are the learning outcomes that by the end of the semester you will have demonstrated, or you will have presented learning in these areas right here. This SLO specifically deals with task 1. As you're completing the APSL task 3, then you're going to be demonstrating learning in this area. And basically that's the ability to use technology to enhance student learning. So I just wanted to draw those to your attention, make sure that you knew where those were at. They will be in the beginning of each evidence within the handbook, but just don't forget this handbook and the value that it contains for you as you work through this program. So I'm going to do that and move over to the Blackboard shell. Now, I don't know if I need to review any of this. Is everyone, do you feel comfortable? I mean, just for the very nature of the task 1 and the task 2 that I'm getting from this cohort and the process, everybody seems to be pretty familiar with the process and little hiccups at the beginning, which there always are. But I just want to make sure, does everyone feel comfortable with this process of working within the internship shell? So you know, and I'm making myself a note here because I just thought of something that I wanted to discuss. So you know then when you finish a task, whether it be task 1, task 2, or task 3, you put it into the task for review to begin with. We exchange replies and information. I give you feedback, you revise. Usually just takes 1 round of feedback and you revise and it's in good shape at that point. Sometimes it's 2. I've done as much as 4 before. And then when it is ready to go, and by ready to go, that means that I felt like I have given you all the feedback that I can give. I've made every suggestion for improvement that I can see. And at that point in time, I feel like it's good to be graded. So when it's good to be graded, I will tell you ready for the evaluation Dropbox or ready for Dropbox. And when I reply within the comment section on that particular task, then you take, that's the cue for you to take that task, that final version. And please remember, I know there's several drafts of each task. Keep up with which task draft is which, because I've had people, had candidates that we'll do a round of revisions, we'll get it to the final draft, and then when they upload it to evaluation Dropbox, they accidentally upload the rough draft or the second draft. And so I'm like, what happened? I thought we had all this situated. So just kind of whatever you use to save these documents, make sure you got a good system to where you know this is the final draft. So when you have the final draft and I tell you ready for Dropbox, you upload to the Dropbox and for that particular evidence, which is the APSL, and then it's graded. And once it's graded, you are done with that task for right now. So many of you, if not all of you, have got task 1 and got it graded. Many of you right now are in task 2. I know there's some feedback sitting out there that I need to give some of you. I'll promise I will take care of that and have everything. What I like to do is maybe to make sure on Friday that I've given feedback to everybody that's asked feedback, so that way you have the weekend to work on any revision. So my goal is 24 hours. I don't know if you know this, I think maybe I mentioned it, but one of the jobs that I have is I'm Director of Federal Programs, and we're being audited or monitored from DPI. It's our turn to be monitored. So I'm really working. As a matter of fact, I just came in the door when about 5 minutes before to get online to meet with you guys. So this week has been a really busy week. It'll settle down a little bit after this, but anyway, I will make sure that I give you the feedback. If for some reason it's been more than 24 hours and you haven't received feedback from me, shoot me an email. The way the Blackboard shell, the way it's listed and the notifications that I get, it's real easy, especially if I get a lot of notifications at one time within an hour or two. It's real easy for me to overlook one. So don't let it sit there thinking, well, you know, he's just not giving me feedback. I wonder what's happening with Dr. Bullis. So if it's been more than 24 hours and I have not given you feedback, please feel free to send me an email. Let me know that it's sitting out there. You're not going to hurt my feelings. That's just a good accountability check for me to make sure that I give you timely feedback. All right, so as we were talking, right now you're in task 3. You're going to upload that. We're going to get it in good shape. You're going to put it in the Dropbox. You want to get 100. Then you're going to move to task 4. Then you're going to move to task 5. Task 5 is the final task for the Absol. Once you get graded on task 5, I'm going to give you some more information and tell you what to do at that point. Dr. Todd will tell you what to do as well. But once you have all those individual tasks completed, you combine them into one whole document with one cover page, one reference, one appendix. It's as if you wrote a novel and you have a chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5. That's the specific parts of the novel, but it is one whole document. So you'll do that. Once you combine it into one whole document, and also one of the things you really need to keep track of is as you, especially, you're doing your annotated bibliography now, but the PLC research that you did in task 1, and I know some of you will insert some, like in task 4, when you get ready to do your action plan, you may quote some literature about what it is to formulate an action plan. But as what I'm saying is, as you do literature quotes and you do literature references, make sure that you keep up with those references in your reference page. That's one of the things I check. I'll go through and I'll look at each of the citations that you put into your document, scroll down to the reference page, make sure they're all there. I'll look at the reference page, see what you've referenced, and then I'll scroll back up to the document to make sure that you have actually put some citations from that piece of literature. So do a double check on that, especially when you get into the end, when you do your final evidence narrative, when you complete that Absol for one whole document, make sure that you do that reference check, and that because it is easy to get off track, especially when it is compartmentalized like it is right now. And you take those compartments to make one whole document. Sometimes that can be a little bit of a challenge, making sure you get each of those references in there. So just do a double check. I mean, basically, if it's a particular name like Dufour, you can go through, you're up in Microsoft Word, find and replace button, click on find, type in Dufour, and it will show you all the references of that particular name within the document. So that's just a good way to quit. Yeah. Yes, sir. I got a question.
Going back to when we have the one whole document, and you're mentioning the reference page, when we do the one whole document, is it going to be one reference page of all 5 tasks, or will it be separated by task? Does that make sense? So will we have one reference page with everything in our final submission?
Scott, that's a great question. Thanks for asking it. Yes, to answer your question, yes, you will have one reference page that will represent all the citations in each of the 5 tasks, whatever they may be.
Because on this one, on task 2, I did end up referencing just in when we were researching data. I guess if you use a graph, you also have to kind of reference where you got that graph, right? So
yes.
So is it okay just to have, like on task 2, the reference page with maybe just the 2 references that I might have used, and then ultimately go back and create the master reference? Like, we don't need to pull the master page and keep it one big one for each task submission to y'all, do we?
No, that's a great question. No, it does not need to be a running document. In task 1, the reference page should just reflect the references for task 1. In task 2, the reference page should just reflect the references in task 2. Once you complete task 5, and I say, you're ready to combine all this and get it ready for the final evidence narrative. In the final evidence narrative, that reference page should reflect all the citations of all the tasks. So what you said was right on target. Great question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good question. I appreciate you asking that. So once you do the final evidence narrative, that's just me having an opportunity to give you one more grade, as we talked about the last time we met, and to make sure on my piece that I've done everything that I can do to get you in good enough shape. When my goal is, when it leaves me after the final evidence narrative, you've got a 3 or a 4 on that rubric, and you're not going to have to touch it again. That's my goal. I take pride in that, actually, for my candidates to do that. I like that batting average I got, so I'm going to continue to strive to keep that a high batting average and make sure that once it leaves me, you're not going to have to do any more revisions. It should be done, and you not have to touch it again as far as doing revising that document. That's my goal. So we get to that point. All right, so then that brings us to the task string. Well, excuse me, there's another step there. You need to take that back to Dr. Todd and do the turn it in process. Once you complete the turn it in process, Dr. Todd will say, okay, this is ready for task string. So let's review task string. I believe I've got it pulled up over here. Okay, sign in. And if you'll remember, there are basically two compartments in task string. One of the compartments is your DRF, and DRF stands for Directed Response Folios. I'm going to bring up the sample that I have from spring of 2019. It's still applicable here. So once you've done turned it in, the APSL's complete. You're ready for it to be evaluated. You're ready for it to be shown to the evaluators as your first step in getting licensures in this program. Then you take that APSL and you will upload it here under MELS 601 where it says APSL. And you just upload it and submit for evaluation. Now, depending on the time of the semester, if you're pretty much staying on track and got a good timeline of submitting the documentation, then when you submit this, and let's say it's 2/3 of the way through the semester, then you may hear back from that evaluator within an hour. It could take as long as 24 hours. If for whatever reason you're a little bit behind the timeline, whether you were, God forbid you got sick or your PLC team couldn't meet, you had some scheduling issues, and you got it in a little bit later in the semester, then it may take a little bit while, because as you can probably imagine, when it's closer to the final date, those start crowding up, and sometimes creates a bottleneck. Now, once again, I don't know who your evaluator is. They are anonymous. For obvious reasons. If you ever have a question on the evaluation, then you can feel free to address it to me. I will forward it on to Dr. Lamb, and Dr. Lamb supervises and monitors the evaluators, and he will have that conversation with them and get back to you. Now, for some reason, and this happens rarely, but it does happen, if you get the APSL back, or anytime during this program you get a final evidence back and it's not a 3 or a 4, it happens to be less than 3, then you're going to have to revise and resubmit. If that happens, which like I said, it's very rare that does happen, but it can happen. Then as soon as you get, I'm not speaking like it's going to happen, but if you get a reply from the evaluator that says you need to revise and resubmit, contact me immediately, because we're going to get together in a Zoom session, look over that document, look at the feedback that the evaluator gave you, and then we're going to make any corrections that they deem needs to be made to get it to a 3 or a 4. So just keep in mind, we'll talk about that process again as we get a little bit closer to submitting, but I just want to go ahead and plant that seed in your head now. I'm going to wait once again to address the competency analysis and the School of Ed dispositions a little bit later when we talk about really, this isn't anything new. You're not going to have to recreate anything to satisfy these two requirements. You're actually pulling information that's already contained in the APSL. So it's just a matter of pulling it in and putting it in there. So it's really not applicable until task 5. So we'll probably go over that in task 5. So as I said, in task stream, you have 2 compartments. One is the DRF, the Directed Response Folio, and the other is your competency folio, which is what we talked about last week. Now, for some reason, if you weren't able to be with us during our last session and you haven't had a chance to hit to watch the recording, to set up this portfolio, this electronic portfolio, if you will go to the internship shell in the video library, there's a little 2-minute video here that shows you how to create this. Now, I told you last time that we met to make sure that you got that done this week. I have received some emails from some of you that you've created your competency folio. Please take care of that this week, because you've already got artifacts in hand. From task 1, you've got likely a email between you and the principal with getting permission to set up the PLC. You've likely or probably got emails between you and your PLC committee, setting up the date, setting up the time. I know some of you even did some pre-survey before that very first meeting. You've got the agenda, you've got the minutes. I know many of you have got video recordings of you presenting that first meeting or facilitating that first meeting. So you're creating some artifacts right now. As you're doing that, it's a whole lot easier to go ahead and drop those into your competency folio as you go through the semester than try to wait at the end of the semester to go back, be in a rush, think about, okay, well what competency did I address in ABSL? What do I want to show? Grab that artifact, put it in there. Do it as you go along and start that process now, because believe it or not, you're kind of winding down right now as you move towards task 3 and task 4. The hard work, in my opinion, the same thing with the dissertation. The hardest part of the dissertation is chapters 1 and 2. After you get done with chapters 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 5 are relatively easy. All the hard stuff is at the beginning. Same thing with the ABSL. Getting that PLC created, getting those people together, kind of mapping out what you're going to do and what direction you want to go, pulling all that data and analyzing that data together. That's really in my opinion, that's the most time-consuming part. So now your team should be coming together. They should be working collectively. You should have a handle more of the personalities and how to facilitate, and you can begin to kind of focus more and more and more on the direction that you want to go. So as you create those artifacts, go ahead and find out where that artifact is applicable in your competency folio and drop it into there. So we pull up the competency folio. Here are the 21 competencies, and the best thing to do is to go through each of these competencies, get a pen and a piece of paper, and say, okay, communication, ABSL. I need to, that's one that it's applicable to the ABSL. Change management, okay, that's applicable to the ABSL. Conflict management, I got to get an artifact for that. Creative thinking, customer focus, okay, don't have to worry about putting an artifact in customer focus right now. Let's go to delegation. Delegation, okay, I need something in delegation. Dialogue inquiry, no, you don't have to worry about the ABSL and dialogue inquiry, so I don't have to put an artifact there. Emotional intelligence, no, ABSL's not applicable for that. Environmental awareness, okay, so you get the picture. I'm not insulting your intelligence, but just want to kind of map that out for you. Is just go ahead and go through each of these 21 competencies and kind of, map out in the ABSL which artifacts would be applicable to some of these competencies. When you get to a competency that you want to upload an artifact to, communication, then you have several ways to do this. And please remember, this is basically your website. You can, if you're going for an interview after we get done with this program, and you want to show this artifact off, you can do publish and share and send it to whoever you want to. It's basically your web page. Now you can go in here and you can edit the style, you can kind of edit the way things flow in the document, you can put colors, you can put in text boxes. You really, it's yours to create as you will. Whether you spend a lot of time on it or you believe that you have enough time to spend on it, that's up to you. But at the end of the day, this can help you get a job as a school administrator by showing this, maybe not in the interview, but maybe previous to the interview, you can send this to the interview team and give them an opportunity to look at it as you would your resume. So, but if you have, it just depends on what format or what type of artifact you have. If you're a video, then here's how to upload a video, or you can embed your media. If it's a text or image, these just kind of give you some radio buttons to, depending on what kind of artifact you got, to upload. Remember, on this you will see, and it's referenced in the Scale Handbook, digital learning competencies, as we talked about last time. That is just, you don't have to really do anything with digital learning competencies because it is already embedded by the very nature, just like the graphic organizers, the visuals that you're going to create in task 3. That satisfies a digital learning competency. If you do a Zoom session of one of your PLC meetings, man, that's a digital learning competency right there. So that just for the very nature of going through this, these tasks, you're going to have the opportunity to show digital learning competencies. Now, I can't remember if I told this cohort or the other cohort that I have had candidates in the past to go ahead and get this pre-approved by their digital learning competency coordinator, whoever signs off on those DLCs in your district, and then shared this with that person, and they got DLC credit for the things that they highlighted in this portfolio. Okay, let me go to the chat here real quick. Okay. How long does the video clip need to be? Well, that's a good question, because with converting it to YouTube, it's not so much an issue. If it's an MP4, of course, the longer the video, the longer to upload, the more problems that you have. But as a link to YouTube, it's not that big deal. I think that's basically depending on what you want to show. If you're wanting to show communication, or you want to show conflict management, so whatever part in that video, whatever length it takes to where you feel like that shows your competency. So I would not, make it. Most people aren't going to watch more than 2 or 3 minutes, especially in an interview team. If you upload an hour-and-a-half PLC meeting or a 45-minute PLC meeting, they're probably going to go get popcorn and checking their email after a couple of minutes. So that's just my opinion. As I said, you put in there whatever time that you think is necessary to show evidence of that competency. But once again, I would think 3 to 5 minutes would probably suffice. All right. Okay, I hold on just a minute. I got another comment here. Okay, question was, do we send you the task of your review when we send the revised draft to Dr. Todd? Okay, great question. So first thing you do is you do your peer review, you do revisions based on your peer review. And it's my understanding that you send that to Dr. Todd. Dr. Todd is going to give you feedback at that point. After Dr. Todd gives you her feedback and you get the feedback from task 1, after that, then you send to me. I don't have due dates of when you put it into the internship shell. We talked about that because I know you're working off Dr. Todd's due dates. And if you'll just send it to me right after Dr. Todd gives you feedback and you revise it, then you're going to stay on track. Sorry, I missed that question earlier. Sorry about that. All right, so as I said, your artifacts will show up down here. So once you get your artifacts loaded, all the artifacts that you load for Absol, you can at that point, and this is just a review, request comments. Because before the end of the semester, you are going to do a formal request for comments for me. And I'm going to check off that you've got the artifacts that you're supposed to have in this competency folio in relationship to the Absol, because this can keep you from graduating. This can keep you from getting licensure. If you miss an artifact and you get down to 605 and graduation is next week, and it for whatever reason it didn't get put in there, You don't want to be in that position. So we're going to be adamant and be sure that everything that you need for the APSL, for this first round of evidences, artifacts, are loaded up in there. That's my job, to make sure that happens and you don't get any surprises later on in the program. So once you get them all ready, you request comment. Okay, computer, come on. There we go. All right, now once again, please, 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 please don't do that. Just for whatever competencies you've uploaded artifacts to, that's the ones that you click on, okay? And once you get all of those clicked to where you've uploaded artifacts, you continue. You find my name. It could be the only name out there. It could be one of many, but you find my name. Click on that and hit continue again. And what that does is that sends me an email notification that you're requesting comments. That's how I know to go in there and look. And I'll look at the artifact. Now, some people say, well, do I need to to write something? Do I need to include the narrative from the APSL? No, you do not. It is okay, especially if you're doing your DLC, digital learning competency. It is okay to put, a small caption of what it is, just kind of as you would a web page, video clip of the first PLC meeting, or agenda for the first PLC meeting. If it's not relatively obvious what that artifact is, it's okay to put in a text box and then do a small caption. But don't feel like you have to write anything. This is just, as I said to you last time we met, this is just like an artist's portfolio or a photographer's portfolio. It's just evidence of your competency of that leadership. So it doesn't really require any narrative. I know the guys who look at this, or the people who look at this for licensure, don't like to see a lot of narrative because they don't want to have to read through it. They just want to see that you are indeed producing products that are evidence of your leadership in that particular competency. Any questions about that? Because sometimes that causes a little bit of confusion among the candidates. Excuse me. Among the candidates is whether they have to write a lot or put a narrative in. You do not. A small caption, one caption sentence is fine. Whatever you feel is needed to adequately explain that artifact. If it's an agenda and it's obvious that it was a PLC meeting on this date, this is what you talked about, you don't even have to write anything there. Any questions on that? All right, groovy. All right, so at the end of this, one of the other things that we're going to check towards the end of the semester is your internship logs. Now remember, if you have two places, then you could upload your internship log. The place that you upload your internship log just for feedback each semester is right here in your competency folio. You upload it here, then when you go request comments, you click on internship log, and I'll go in and give you feedback. And that's just towards the end of the semester. That's probably one of the due dates that I will give you of when that needs to be completed. But it's like, it's like the last sometime within the last 2 weeks of the semester. Before then, if you want me to look at your internship log, you can email it to me at the Gardner Webb email address, and I'll give you feedback on it until then. But this is just getting requests. It's where you request for the internship hours that you completed for that semester. And so I sign off at that point in time that you've got those 80 hours, 80 internship hours. And that's a formal signing that documents that you did complete those 80 hours for this semester, and you're good to go. At the end of the program for licensure, you have to show all of that log. The complete 80 hours per semester, all the way up to 605. That's a formal submission of your internship log, and that is done not in your competency folio, but that is done in your DRF at the very bottom, after 605, right here. Don't worry about the final competency. We'll talk about all that later. But the internship log, so in your DRF, where it has all of the courses listed and the different evidences under each course, you don't touch that until the end of the semester. If you happen to do that by accident, send me an email, let me know, and we'll get it removed. It's just a little bit of a process to do that. So to save everybody a little bit of time, make sure that you don't upload anything there until the end of 605. Where you upload for this semester will be in your competency folio underneath your competency. So while we're on that, is everybody still doing okay with your internship hours? Everybody knocking those out, getting those 80 hours in of different leadership opportunities?
Question. I am keeping all mine on a Google Doc so that I can upload those pretty easily. When I upload to the internship log here, can I just provide a link, or am I going to need to convert that into a Word doc, or what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, thanks, Megan. I didn't catch the first part of that. How are you saving that information now?
In a Google form.
Okay.
So that it keeps track of all that.
Yeah, if you do that, and same thing, and that's great. You guys are asking some really good questions tonight. In relationship to your narrative, sometimes people will put a Google form link inside the narrative to show minutes from the meeting. Like somebody was on the Google Doc and they were taking minutes in real time as the PLC meeting occurred, and somebody says you can access the minutes from the meeting at this Google Doc link. If you do that, make sure that you make it open and nobody has to request permission for access, because if your evaluator is evaluating that absolute, Megan, I haven't forgot your question. I'll get back to you in just a minute. But if they're evaluating that absolute and they click on that Google Doc and then they're in the middle of evaluation, it may be 2 o'clock in the morning while they're evaluating your absolute, and it says send email for permission to access, they're not going to fool with that. They're going to count that as if it didn't exist. So putting that Google Doc link in your narrative is a little bit risky.
Tricky.
I recommend you go ahead, download that as a Microsoft Word document and put it in your appendix. Now, getting back to Megan, getting back to your question, you can upload it when you hit internship log. If you want to go down here and do a text, an image, or just a text, and you want to go here and just type in that or put that URL, just make sure that I can get access to it. Okay, so yeah, you can do that. That's not a problem.
While I've got you, I have one more question about the internship. I am doing professional development right now, and this might be too specific. If we need to talk about this later, we can. But I'm doing professional development to support the ELs in the school, and I will eventually be teaching this to the faculty. Is that professional development? Is that something along the lines of internship hours?
Absolutely. Anytime that you're facilitating some type of professional development and you're the trainer, I see that as evidence of leadership activity, because as a principal, you're going to be doing the same thing. And good for you, by the way, because I'm also the ESL director, or now it's ELL director for my county too. So great. Tell you what, I might get you to come to our school system, do that if it's a really good training. So good for you. I know that population needs some additional support.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was nervous about getting the 80 hours. That's a lot of time to spend. Yeah. So I'm glad that counts.
It is in the middle of a full-blown semester of school. If you're high school or first half of the year, it certainly can be. Yeah, those professional development hours, I will count those. If for some reason, now it's not, if you go to a professional development and you're setting in the professional development as a participant, can that count? Well, it depends on what the professional development is. If it is leadership professional development, it may be applicable. I know some districts have meetings for people who have aspirations, aspiring school administrators. Excuse me, I'll get that out in a minute. School administrators, where they go to the central office, maybe the director of our assistant superintendent or superintendent, talk to them about some leadership and give them some training in leadership. If you attend some of those, let me know, because depending on what it is and what you can share with me, I may count those hours as well. Okay. If you go to a school board meeting, and attend a school board meeting, then I usually count that as well, because I have to attend every school board meeting. Principals, they're not expected to attend every school board meeting, but they are expected to attend some, and that's leadership opportunity there as well. I don't really throw anything out the window until I take a good look at it. If you got any question about it at all, let me know.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Great questions. Okay, that's it. Basically, all that I have for this evening. I'll be happy to stay here and answer any questions and respond to whatever you need. If just let me know. Are there any questions? Anything that anybody wants to talk through?
Dr. Bullis, is there
Yes.
any task 3 that you want to suggest, or it just, looking at, because there's so many articles to look at and the annotated bibliography, do you have any suggestions for, I know that we went through this on Tuesday night with Dr. Todd, but it wasn't recorded, and so is there anything you'd like to say to go over task 3?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. Yeah, Dr. Todd told me she was having a little bit of problem with the recording. As far as task 3 goes, and as always, I refer back to the scale handbook and pull that up as I speak. Okay, so I'm going to do a brief version. Let me know if you need more. Basically, you identified a learning gap. You identified a learning need, something in your school. Based on that data analysis, your team determined that you identified that gap in learning that you're going to address. Now, once you identify the need, then you need to find a solution to meet that need. Well, that solution just can't be any flash in the pan. You know all this already. It needs to be, especially if you're a Title I school, it needs to be an evidence-based strategy. So there needs to be literature out there that says, yes, this is a recognized professional solution that has met this need in other areas. Now, you got to be careful, because if it's a vendor and they're trying to sell you their software package, well, of course, they're going to come up with, research that says that, and I'm grabbing one out of the air, Adminum, Exact Path, the Exact Path that specifically addresses these needs. They're going to throw all that stuff at you. Well, is there any third-party research out there that says this particular program? And it doesn't have to be a technology program. It could be, using Canvas in the classroom, which is technology-based, of course. But even if you do Google Classroom, or if you do, you work with Google Docs, is there evidence out there that says that this is the addresses this particular need? And you need to look at all of the literature that says that. Now, you and your team might already have a kind of a good idea of what area you want to go in, but just make sure that as you look through that literature, you pick the 3 to 5, look through 3 to 5 to determine what best addresses that identified need. Now, the prompt says that it is to feature an online tool, so it's technology based, but it doesn't have to be a technology program. It doesn't have to be Exact Path. It doesn't have to be Adminum. It doesn't have to be Study Island, but it does need to be technology based, which most of them are now anyway. So then you go through and you create that annotated bibliography, and you look through that, and then you determine out of those evidence-based strategies which one you're going to go with. You detail with your PLC graphic organizers. Now, it could be a perch chart. It could be any type of graphic organizer that shows how it's in relation to that need and how it addresses that need. Rather than graphic organizers, I usually use the term visual. So it can be any visual that illustrates how that evidence-based strategy addresses that or how it will address it. You can pull some of those off as the literature review that you looked at, but it does say PLC created and used multiple graphic organizers. I'm going to jump down here because I'm getting some notifications from the chat box. Let me see what we got here. Okay, the question was, so we need 5 sources and 3 of them technology. I'm going to go back and tell you to check with Dr. Todd on that. What I tell my candidates, basically, when I did this as a course instructor, I was okay with 3 to 5 resources, 5 good evidence-based strategies. And I would tell them to focus in on technology because that's what the prompt asks for. But I'm going to tell you to email Dr. Todd or get back in touch with Dr. Todd and find out what her standard is for this course on that. It's a great question, though. So once again, let's go back to the rubric, because I always like to take a final look at a task in relationship to the rubric, because this is the rubric that the evaluator will be looking at when they evaluate your document. So you create an annotated bibliography. Remember, there's some helpful hints on how to do that. Dr. Stedman sent out some stuff about the annotated bibliography. There's some really good information about how to include that. And then candidates will create, once again, please note that it says candidates will create multiple graphic organizers and visuals, such as charts, graphs, tables, timelines, embedded into the narrative, not as an appendix, but embedded to the narrative. So you talk about them as you display them, and you do them as figures. So once again, you have to go APA on how to introduce a figure, how to introduce a chart, how to introduce a table. Supported by research to demonstrate how the PLC projects the chosen best practices strategy will impact the identified need. So out of that annotated bibliography, you choose which practice that you're going to implement. Because the next step is you create an action plan about it. That's task 4. And Dr. Todd will go over with you that in the next class session. But you choose, your team comes together, and in your narrative, talk about that conversation. You know, what were some of the comments? What did people have to say about the different strategies that you guys explored? And determining which one would be best to address your identified need. And looking at these, don't lose sight of what you identified in task 2 as a learning gap. Don't, you know, Grandpa used to say, don't go chasing rabbits. You know, stay focused on the trail that you're on and what you're looking for. Don't necessarily get distracted to where you lose sight of the learning gap that you and your team chose to address. So what have you got to show? You got to show annotated bibliography and online tools that demonstrates that you have done the research and you've looked through those best instructional practices. Now, bear in mind, it doesn't say best vendor packages or best software programs or best websites. It's an instructional practice. So don't limit yourself to just software packages or vendors out there of what they can do. That's associated with the identified need. And then you're going to have to show that you use that data to specify the needs and that there is a direct connection between that strategy and that need. And that's based off of research. It's correlated. And then you include those graphic organizers to illustrate what the projected impact is going to be. And once again, that can come from the literature, because there's literature out there that says, you know, somebody saw a 30% improvement in whatever area you're talking about. Well, can you project that same improvement in your population and your target population? So you show that as well. And you can, at some point in time, present this to the leadership team. So those visuals can be a PowerPoint presentation as well. Okay, that's a visual, that's a technological representation of the information that you're getting. So at the end of task 3, got your PLC team together, you got your identified need, and then you got the proposed solution to that need. So at that point in time in task 4, you plan out how you want to implement. That's your implementation plan, that's your action plan. And basically what you're doing in APSL is action research, which is all about education. All right, but then you create that action plan to show how you're going to implement it. And I know I'm getting into task 4, but it kind of helps see the whole picture. In that, you're going to list the objectives or the strategies, and just like a normal action plan. What's the strategy? What's the timeline? What's the resources needed? Who's responsible? And then how are you going to evaluate whether it was successful or not? And that's basically where we're at with task 3 and moving into task 4. Any questions?
Okay, I'm going to wear out my welcome. I apologize.
No problem.
The time that we spend researching and the time that we spend crunching the data and creating these projections and annotated bibliographies, can we count those in our 80 hours?
Good job. Good question.
I'm stressing over the 80 hours, so help me out.
And I tell you what, I can't help you out, Megan, but the 80 hours need to be in addition to the absolute, in addition to the activity of the evidences. Now, if you're really, what you say you are, send me an email. I can give you some options. We can talk about your specific situation. I mean, I've had candidates before that was an instructional specialist and covered several schools. So to get into one school to do 80 hours of leadership opportunities was a struggle. I've had candidates who were in a parochial school or a small charter school or a small private school, and the opportunities there were limited. So we can work through this. I'm not worried about the 80 hours. I know that we can find them in your activities. I just need to know a little bit more about your specific situation. So if you want to send me an email, and then we can do an individual Zoom, or we can talk over the phone or whatever, and we'll get you those 80 hours. I just need to know what your situation is, and then I can give you several options to look at. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it. We'll get it. We're all going to make the finish line. As long as you guys keep running with me, we're going to all get to the finish line. I promise you that. That's my job. All right. Any other questions? And these are great questions. And that's my job, I'm here to support you and ease your suffering as much as possible, but make sure that you're successful in this program. So don't hesitate. Email me, reach out to me, and ask me anything. Don't let a question go unanswered or a concern go unaddressed, because that's just wastes time. Go ahead and get it out there, make me aware of it, and we'll just work together to get it resolved. So, anything else I can do for any of you? As always, and just like I told Megan, if you want an individual Zoom, or you want to Zoom with your small group, or you just want to talk on the phone, let me know. We'll set something up and we'll get together just so we can keep on trucking. Just let all of you know, I am going to be in Raleigh 2 days next week. During the day, it's pretty intensive training. And so I don't know how much I will be able to respond to email, because we're going to be busy doing some work and things of that nature, and doing some training. But in the evenings, I'll try to catch up with you. So usually I try to respond to anything that comes my way during the day. I check that Gardner Webb email every chance I get. So if you email me something on the Monday or next Monday and Tuesday, I'll respond right away or within an hour or two. Just know that I'm in Raleigh and I'm doing some different activities, but I'll take care of it that evening or early in the morning. So just so you guys know what's going on. Well, unless anybody needs anything else, it's 7:54. I'll be, like I said, I'm happy to stay here as long as you want. You need me or want me to. I pray that you all stay safe and healthy, and I pray that your family stay safe and healthy. Reach out to me if you need anything. You guys take care, and we'll see you next time.